Is the wireless mic up there on the podium as well? He's done. Done.
All right, we can start.
Can you grab that with you? Can you take it with you?
All right. Y'all ready? Everybody ready? All ready? All right. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Simmons, Jr. I am the library administrator here at the Auburn Avenue Research Library. Thank you for being here again for the Collecting, Researching, and Writing While Black Conference. This session that we're about to have is called Bridging the Canvas, Conversations Between Collectors and Creators of African American Art. Bridging the Canvas aims to foster deep connections and understanding between those who create and those who collect, highlighting the vital role of African American art in shaping cultural and historical perspectives. Through engaging discussion, participants will gain insight into the motivation, challenges, and triumphs of artists and collectors alike, celebrating the vibrant legacy and future of African American art. I have the honor and privilege of introducing our moderator for the evening, Tracy Murrell. Tracy Murrell is an Atlanta-based visual artist. She has shown in numerous group and juried exhibitions, and her works have been featured in art publications including Create Magazine, Art Voices Magazine, Studio Visit Magazine, New American Paintings. Her painting, Walk Alone, We Will Follow, was selected for the cover of Witnessing Girlhood Toward an Intersectional Tradition of Life Writing by Fordham University Press. She has been awarded artist residencies at the Hambridge Center for the Arts in Ramon Gap, Georgia, Atlanta Printmaker Studio in Atlanta, and Green Olive Arts in Morocco. The Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Commission, Incorporated commissioned 2 of Tracy's paintings for Georgia Tech's Dorothy Crossland Tower Library. Murrell's museum solo exhibition exploring contemporary Haitian migration opened in August of 2021 at the Hammons House. Her curatorial work can be currently seen in our Carrie McFeeder's gallery exhibition entitled Her Stories, By Her, Of Her, For Her, a celebration of artworks from Auburn Avenue Research Library's permanent collection. Murrell's work is included in various private, corporate, and municipal collections. Please join me in welcoming the moderator for the evening, Ms. Tracy Murrell.
How's everybody doing today? So this is going to be really an intimate conversation, and I put emphasis on conversation. So to my immediate left, I have the wonderful artist, art teacher, collector, George Galbreath, with his beautiful wife. And to my far left, I have the phenomenal Fahmou Pecou and all of his amazement. And I would like for each of you to, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Can everyone hear me? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yes, I am a artist, and yes, I am a full-time high school art teacher at Westlake High School. Sorry, I messed you up over there. I will say that Sohè, my lovely wife, has pushed my career to its limits, like where I basically am creating full-time, doing all the things with our high school students, such as we started a nonprofit called the Youth Artist Program, where we take the students out to various different art experiences around the city. We founded or co-founded a large group art social called Articulate ATL, all the things that I did not expect to be doing because I used to really love my couch, and I still do love my couch and my movies. But Sohè is like the brains of the operation, so along with the collecting as well. But yeah.
Yours works too, George. Hi, my name is Sohè Galbreath. I'm married to George Galbreath, and we've been on this artistic journey for the past 15 years. People ask me what I did before. My background is engineering and finance, and I happened to marry an artist. But my mom is a serial entrepreneur and creative, and growing up, I used to help her with things like break-even points and started doing tax returns at 14 just because we needed it for like free lunch. I needed it for FAFSA, all the things. And when I married George, I found that he needed a lot of the same help and assistance that my mom had needed. And so I figured out that if I could leave corporate and leave the engineering and logistics and do that for people that actually loved and appreciated like artists, that my heart would be full. And so for the past 12 years, my heart has been extremely full, as well as my hands, very busy. But I'm grateful that God continued to place people in my life to allow me to do the things that I like doing, and now I actually get to do them with people that I love and appreciate. So Sohè Solutions, I founded in 2012, and we help artists and creatives in the areas of finance and organization. We founded Articulate around the same time. We usually feature 30 to 35 emerging artists, and artists keep 100% of their sales. Last year's artists sold just shy of $100,000 in one night. So that is the way in which we try to give back. And then through the Youth Artist Program, George noticed a difference when he would judge like the Governor's Honors Program and looking at AP portfolios. And the largest difference was just through exposure. And so these kids on the South Side just weren't being exposed in the same way. And so when he comes to me with a problem, I like to figure out how we can solution it. And that was the Youth Artist Program. And so how do we increase exposure for the youth? Since then, I've been blessed to be one of the founding board members for ADAMA, founded by Dr. Fahmou, Pecou, which I'm sure he'll talk a little bit more about. But that has been just an extension of all things wonderful, all things art related. And so I am grateful to the city of Atlanta for allowing me to immerse myself in the artistic economy that is so great here.
Dr. Pecou?
That's me. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Fahmou Pecou. I am a visual artist, curator, educator, and also, as Sohè mentioned, the founder of the African Diaspora Art Museum of Atlanta, also known as ADAMA. We are a innovative museum focusing on the art and culture of the 21st century African diaspora and really providing greater institutional representation for Black culture in the city of Atlanta. So we're really excited. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't make a shameless plug and say that we just opened our newest exhibition entitled Pieces of Us last night at our space, which is in Pittsburgh Yards. The exhibition was co-curated by Sohè, and it's absolutely fantastic. It features selections from a local collection, Dr. Damien and Kimberly Fisher, who over the last 30 years or so have amassed a collection of over 300 works by major Black artists from around the world. I myself have an exhibition that is now in its last week. It closes on the 23rd of November, but the exhibition is called We Didn't Realize We Were Seeds. The subtitle is We the Roses. The exhibition is on view at Johnson Lowe Gallery in Miami Circle in Buckhead. Yeah, I have the privilege of calling everybody on the stage a friend, so I'm looking forward to the conversation and grateful for all of you for being here.
So I just want to do a quick check. How many people are familiar with Articulate? Okay, that's around half of you. Okay, how many people are familiar with ADAMA? Oh, I love that. Okay, fantastic. And those who aren't, please, take the time, because if you're looking to collect work, going to Articulate is the best way to start, because their selection process of emerging artists is top tier, And I go there every year with my budget and exceed it every single year and find a priceless piece that I absolutely love. And I had another event, so I couldn't come to the opening last night, but I will be there soon. Okay. So we're going to kick off this conversation with, I would like to know, what was the first piece that you collected that you consider major or not major? Actually, just tell me about the first piece that you collected and why.
So this mic did work, my bad. I think the piece I'd like to talk about is our Hebrew Brantley piece.
Okay. Nice. Okay.
There were plenty of amazing works before that, but it was the first time that I realized that we could stretch our budget to sacrifice a purse or sacrifice a trip. He came to Swan Coach? No. Chastain, yeah, that was, probably 2016. Okay, she's my memory, of course. And, I was looking at the prices, and I was just like, man, the works in here, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. And in the corner, there were these two small works. And we've come to call them givebacks, the smaller pieces or the more affordable pieces in a space that an artist basically wants to give to the common folks. And we stretched our budget. There was only one left. Jeremiah Ojo actually said, hey man, his work is gonna be amazing. It's already amazing, but it's gonna appreciate. And we liked the work, and we stretched for it. And to this day, people ask me, if the house caught on fire, what piece would you grab? Now, mind you, I would grab yours. I would grab Fahmou's. I would go back in the house a few times, but I would probably grab Hebrews first because I know it could pay for a lot of those renovations. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. Definitely.
Sohè?
So you would think that we're not even in the same house with the way you answered that question. But the most memorable piece for me, and it was the first piece, George was working on a triptych, and it's the jazz musicians, and he was working on the pieces, and when he was done, I said, we can't sell those are mine. And he said, what do you mean I can't sell them? I make work, and then we sell the work. And I said, well, not these. This is something I want for me. And it took him a little while to understand it. He's like, oh, okay. And so I remember we were living in Alpharetta, and I placed, we had put them on, they were in our living area, but I would sit there working because I was still at my full-time corporate job, but we had started Sohè Solutions, so this is 2012, 2013, and I'd be up until 12, 1 o'clock in the morning working on this second thing. And I would look up at those three jazz musicians who looked like they were loving life, doing their best, doing what they wanted to do with a certain level of freedom. And I felt like they were speaking to me, this is gonna be okay, this journey you're on. And so I still often think of those pieces as not only being the beginning of our collection, but they were the beginning of my comfort in leaving my corporate space.
Oh, I love that.
For me, there's two pieces that I would like to talk about. The first piece that I collected that I really felt like I was doing something serious is a piece by a really fantastic artist named Pamela Fatsimo Sundstrom. And Pamela is from South Africa. We did a residency together in Panama, and I just fell in love with her work. She's an impeccable draftsman. Her drawing is just out of this world. And it's a very simple piece of a figure with a kind of swan head coming out of it. And I love that piece so much. It's the first adult, piece of art that I acquired. And then when earlier this year, when one of my daughters moved out into her first, well, not her first, but her first big girl apartment, this piece used to hang in her room. And so she was like, can I take that piece to my new apartment? It will set my apartment off. And I was like, no, you can't take my piece to your apartment. But she begged and begged and begged, and I finally relented. And then I cried, and I cried, because that piece was so it's special to me. But also, it's one of those things where you realize the art that you buy and you live around and you live within, it also becomes impactful to your family too, and it becomes significant to them. And so, while I did cry, I did let her get the piece. But the other piece that I wanted to talk about is a piece by Big Chief Malonson, who's a amazing artist. He's one of the practicing Mardi Gras masking Indians, but he's also the first from that tradition to make the leap from the masking tradition into the fine art world. And he does these really amazing tableaus and portraits only using beads. So it's hand stitched, and it's amazing. But he did a piece that was a tribute to Barclay Hendricks, who's one of my favorite painters. And when I saw the piece, I was like, I gotta have it. And when I saw the price tag on it, I was like, my wife is gonna kill me. But I bought it, and it hangs in my house proudly. And it's one of the first pieces, again, that I spent significant money for. But I'm so glad I did, because maybe 2 or 3 months after I bought that piece, he sold a piece at an auction for Sotheby's for almost $250,000. So what I paid for it is a steal compared to what it would be worth today.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I have to share my first piece of my collection. And it's an Albert Chung photograph. And I exhibited his work at Hammond's house. And before we had scheduled the exhibition, it was on Facebook. It was the cover of my Facebook. And so we had communicated on that. So when I booked him for the exhibition, I was like, and you're bringing that one, right? My favorite one? He's like, yes, because I already know where it's going. It's going over the fireplace and everything. And so he brought it. And then we got the exhibition hung. And I was like, so if your curator was interested in purchasing, I was pulling out every single kind of anything that helped me, was interested in purchasing that piece, what kind of a payment plan would she be on? And he put me on a payment plan. And it is in my bedroom. And every time I walk into my bedroom, I look at that piece, and I am just filled with peace and just wonder and yes. So, the interesting thing is that when we collect work, each piece has such meaning to us. And I think that's one of the keys about collecting, your reasoning for collecting. One of the questions I have for you is, if you're going to summarize your collection, how would you do that? What is your process in selecting work and making those decisions on what you're going to give up in order to acquire the piece that you want?
So Sohè, with her love of numbers, makes magic happen out of my teacher salary. And I honestly think that she should answer that question because anytime I want something, I say, how is this going to happen? And she works out a plan. So what do you think?
No, we start our top of the year with a budget. So because of so much of the work that I do is in the finance space, tax season, the beginning of the year, that is where 80% of our income comes from, right? And so the budget happens before that starts, right? And so we had decided when I was leaving the corporate space so that I could feel more comfortable that all of our bills could be paid by George's income. So in terms of what our mortgage looked like and our car payment and all the things, that would be George's income. And any money that I made, we could do fun stuff with it. So we could buy artwork, we could travel with it, we could go out to dinner with it. That was what I could bring to the table, and it took a lot of pressure off of me initially. As we've gotten used to the income, right, then some of the pressure has returned. George likes very expensive trips. So he likes first-class flights. He likes 5-star hotels, and things became more and more expensive.
What's wrong with that?
No.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. I've come to enjoy being able to travel with George, right? But
Me too.
The budget is created, at the top of the year, and the budget includes artwork. And the budget includes who we want to add to the collection, who we hope to be able to add, but everything happens after that based on feeling, what feels right. And so we don't have any artists in our collection who we don't appreciate and like and consider to be friends and family. Like, these are all people that we've broken bread with in some capacity. They all have ties to Atlanta. So even the Hebrew Brantley piece was like, oh, he went to Clark, he spent some time in Atlanta. Like, that was, I know that he may be Chicago's son, but that's not the way we view him as a part of our collection and what he has meant to Atlanta and what Atlanta meant to him. So that's a little bit about like our.
I love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Absolutely.
And thank you for getting it started. And as we were collecting, many of our collector friends and mentors explained to us, like, hey, maybe you want to plan out like what your purpose is as a collector, right? And we definitely believe in supporting emerging artists. So that term is like relative, but the artists that we have supported and purchased over the years have all been from Atlanta or had ties to Atlanta in such a way that we basically ended up configuring our collection around that. So when we published our book 2 years ago?
2022.
In 2022, we, it was exciting to be able to publish artists, and many of them that hadn't actually been published before, had their works in, art text and whatnot, just to kind of document that and hopefully spread the word about all the amazing talent here in Atlanta.
And the title for that was A Decade of Collecting Atlanta, because that's where our time had been spent.
Yes.
So I feel like I'm cheating a little bit in terms of my collection, because while I have certainly invested money in building my collection, a lot of my collection comes from relationships that I have with artists, where we make an exchange, or they've gifted me work, in fact, there's a really great photographer by the name of Jonathan Mannion. You may be familiar with him, or you may be more familiar with his work than with him, right? Like, he was the photographer responsible for all of the visual culture of hip hop between the, early 90s to, damn near up until now, you know what I mean? So like classic album covers like DMX album cover. He did Reasonable Doubt. I think he did all of Jay-Z's album covers, right? Like, but he's the photographer for hip hop. But anyway, years and years ago, like maybe in like '98, I saw one of his photos in a magazine. I didn't know it was his photo. I just liked the photo, and I used to make multiple drawings based on this photo. And it was this photo of these little boys, like 8 or 9 little boys with no shirts on, and they're standing looking all hard on a corner in New York. And I just thought it was like a really compelling image, and I used to make these drawings all the time, over and over and over. Last year sometime I was talking to Jonathan, and I was telling him about how I used to make these drawings based on that photograph. And I was traveling for a couple months earlier this year, and I came home and there was a big package, and I opened it up, and inside was a signed copy of one of these photos, 30 by 40 print of the photo, signed by Jonathan. And it like I have a lot of art like that, you know what I'm saying? Like, so like major pieces by major artists, but they were gifts to me, or they were trades, like I have a Kerry James Marshall that I got as a trade, you know what I'm saying? So, again, I feel like I'm cheating, right? Like, but a part of the story of my collection, however, is that it's based on real relationships that I have with artists. It's like a collection of my colleagues and contemporaries. While I think there's always a lot of conversation about how much money a person spends on art and how much the art is worth, for me, the value is really in those stories that I'm able to tell, or those experiences that I'm able to recall when I walk through my house and I see these works.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fahmou got those real give back pieces.
I know.
I like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, do you know how many pieces you have in your collection?
I know I have enough now that my wife is like, if I bring another thing home.
So, you said you do know.
Yeah, we have just over 200 pieces.
Okay. And how are you inventorying them? How are all 200 pieces up in your home?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I have issue with, and I mean, this isn't shade to anybody else, but it's not how I would want to live. I wouldn't want to live with artwork under my bed. I wouldn't want to live with artwork that people can't see. And so when we get to that point, George's mom has a piece of work that used to be like center in our living area, right? I'd rather somebody else live with it than it live underneath my sofa in a closet. So no, in terms of inventorying, at first there was simply a Google spreadsheet, and the naming convention was how we titled the images of the work.
Okay.
But since then, we're grateful for Artwork Archive. It just makes things a whole lot easier.
Okay. And Fahmou?
For as much as I have advised and talked to people about using Artwork Archive to catalog their collection, I have not done that for myself yet. And I really do need to, document. But again, it's I'm not as organized. I don't have an Sohè quite yet.
You kind of do, though. You kind of like.
But no. All of my stuff is up where you can see it,
Okay.
and I have several pieces that are also in my studio. That are part of my collection as well, including a couple of Hebrew Brantleys, because Hebrew and I used to share, and we used to share a studio, like that's my dog. I am often discovering works like that, like I was cleaning out my storage and I found the 2 Hebrew pieces that I have in my collection, from back in the day, so.
And
I have a lot of stuff
I can
like
help
that.
you clean out your storage this time also.
But no, I do have a lot of stuff because I don't have the space to put everything up. I do have stuff in storage and
Okay.
Things like that too.
Okay. And the work that you have in storage, how is it packaged?
It's either boxed or crated.
Okay.
So that part I do take quite seriously, like the preservation and maintenance of work. Even my own stuff in the studio. If it's not actively, showing or traveling in or out, it's in a crate. It's, bubble wrapped. It's packed up neatly so that it doesn't get damaged.
Okay. So if you were going to use 3 words to describe your collection, how would you describe it?
Ooh, I don't know if I can limit it to 3 words.
3 to 5.
Okay.
Or 6.
Let me see. Reflecting the arts ecosystem. Yeah, when we look at our work, we have everything from high school students at Westlake, okay, to former high school students that are now at SCAD or, at whatever institution creating, to emerging artists that have kind of just hit their 20s in their stride, to 30-somethings, all the way to people that are mid-career and kind of reaping the benefits of all that talent and skill and knowledge. So yeah, I think it has the whole gambit. I appreciate that.
Black. I'm very invested in not just that our story gets told, but how our story gets told. Right? Even in my own practice, I'm very intentional about the ways in which I think about the impact of visual culture, and the stories that it tells. Oftentimes stories that are told beyond the limits of words, right? And so, how a person begins to see themselves, how a person begins to think about themselves, is oftentimes informed by visual culture, not something that someone told you, not something that you read in a book, but things that you see that begin to help you shape and form and determine your identity, determine yourself. And so I'm very, conscious of of that, even in terms of the artwork that I have in my home. I want, my children, our guests, you know what I mean, to see and feel seen, in our home.
That's great. I think, I guess I wasn't thinking in terms of like phrases, but a few words would be Black, Atlanta, and family. So the artists that are a part of our collection, like it really represents this Atlanta family of artistic genius that we've been blessed to be a part of. And about 95% of our collection, again, the artists do have ties to Atlanta.
That's wonderful. So what advice would you offer to someone who is looking to either start their collection, start collecting art, or to expand upon their collection?
Finally, a question I was ready for. Okay. All right. Thank you, appreciate it. No, you've been stretching me, So one of the things I love about at least the Atlanta art community, because I can't speak to other places at this point necessarily, is that you could be brand new to the city, right? And get on Instagram and start searching works and say, oh, I like that work. And you could reach out to that artist and they say, oh, I got a show tonight, you should come through. If you buy a piece, just a little piece, oh, you family. Because you're paying bills with, so one of the things I love about this art community is it's not what we typically would consider to be that, that intimidating environment where like art is only for the affluent and the rich and all that. Like Atlanta art, when I think about it, I think about my first experience with the National Black Arts Festival. Like walking and there's like thousands of works everywhere by us, And I believe that people can literally come to this city and like you too can be a collector, right? And the moment you purchase that piece, oh, they're gonna invite you to birthday parties. They're gonna be like, yeah, you should come to my next show, And you will instantly have a social life. And you shouldn't rely on artists for that, but I think it's beautiful that artists are so inviting. Like I think that, I just think that anybody that's interested in collecting can start wherever they are and just like take that leap. And the moment you do, you good.
We are very fortunate because there's other cities that I've gone to, and one of the first questions I ask is like, where are the Black galleries? Well, I think there's one over, like really one, and it's really just a single gallery or two. And here we do have an abundance of exhibitions, shows, studios that you can come to. You can just call the artist up and say, do you allow studio visits? Yeah, come on over, I'll be there tomorrow. Okay, and you can go.
So this is my soapbox.
Okay.
This question that you're asking. And I say this, with all sincerity. I really kind of despise the language that's used around collecting art,
Okay.
Like for example, oftentimes you'll see a headline, such and such work just sold for $1.5 million, at such and such auction, or this gallery, is selling, just sold out all of these works at XYZ price, right? And that kind of language and rhetoric is actually very preventative, right? Because then it makes people start to believe that in order for me to have access to this world, to have access to this work, to have access to this conversation, I gotta come in the room with money falling out of my pockets. You know what I'm saying? I gotta have $10,000, $15,000, $100,000 to even enter the room, right? I heard someone compare art collecting to wine, once, right? You ever been someplace and somebody's talking about wine and they're like, yes, you could get the notes of the such and such, and and there's the there's a hint of blah blah blah, and you can feel the grapes in the winter and the ice of, and you're like, this just tastes like wine, And the thing is, it's like art is very similar in that way. There's people who become gatekeepers who talk about art in a language that, again, makes it feel inaccessible, but it's really, really absolutely not. And George said it best, get it where you live. Start small, start modest, buy what you love. That is just simple as that. And sometimes it don't even have to be buy. What do you do? Oh, I'm a therapist. All right, bet. I'll give you 4 sessions in exchange for, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's all kinds of ways. I've been doing, at my practice for over 25 years. And to this day, I have people who have been telling me for 25 years, one day I'm going to buy one of your paintings. And I'm like, today's a day, right? And if you keep waiting, it's going to keep getting more and more difficult because, the truth is art does appreciate in value, right? Like, it does go up in value. But again, like this idea that one day, when you got to come in one day with your pockets overflowing in order to have a conversation with me, it's in some ways it's kind of offensive. Like, you didn't even ask how much this was, And if you were really interested, if you were really serious about buying something, if you're really serious about acquiring something, let's have a conversation. It's not that hard, It's really not that hard. And so, I'm always, adamant about that, with aspiring collectors, but also with the students that I mentor or artists that I mentor, is to think about how you can position yourself that not only will you make your work desirable and have your work remain competitive as your career grows, but you can also cultivate a community of collectors around you. So if you come out the gate, you still in grad school or you still in undergrad, and you're talking about selling a painting for $15,000, best of luck to you. You might sell it for $15,000, but that'll be the first and the last.
Yeah.
Because you don't really have anything to stand on, right, to justify those prices, and you've already cut out a significant portion of people who could afford to buy your work, because you can't go backwards. You can't sell for $15,000 and then start selling for $1,000. It doesn't work that way. And so when I was starting out, I was advised very early on by some really great mentors to start small, start modest, and grow. Like, allow yourself to have a career as opposed to have a sell.
Yeah. I know that I was reading something right before I get to you, and they were talking about with the art market changes, there are so many young artists that their first shows out of grad school had their work going for $100,000 and $250,000, and now everything's different, and their lives have been totally
decimated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some are leaving because they don't know how, they can't handle it. And as an artist who started selling her work and as an artist who started giving her work away, and to my best friend was like, hold up, we have your work. We got it for Christmas, we got it for weddings, we got it for, every baby shower, everybody got a piece of your work. Okay, it's time for you to be in a gallery. And she set it up for me. And she's like, show up on Tuesday, take all of this, don't be late. And that's how I got my first show.
That's what's up.
And invited all my friends, and they invited their friends, and work sold, and I was like, oh my God, I'm an artist now. Oh my God. And that's my money? Oh, that's great. And that happens so often, but then you have these artists that in the last few years have been kind of coming from a different school, and their work was elevated to the price to where they are not recovering.
Yeah, to your point, there's a really fantastic article in the New York Times that came out about a month or so ago.
Yep, that's
about that same thing, particularly as it relates to Black artists,
yes.
Right? Because in 2020, when the world was trying to be all, inclusive and everybody had a DEI something or another, right? Like, they started, talking about and trying to, like, feverishly selling black art and trying to find the youngest black artists that they could exploit, essentially.
Yeah.
And when, you know, when the wheels went flat on that, you know, bus, then they left all those kids hanging,
Yeah.
you know, and now they can't really compete because they don't have the credibility, they don't have the reputation, they don't have the, you know, the track record, you know, to
They don't have the
justify.
experience.
Right, yeah.
You know, when you're selling your work at a group's organization that you want to support, and you're having those conversations, you're learning the skills to talk about your work. When you have someone that comes in who's going to represent you and is presenting your work at a high level, when that's taken away from you, you don't even know how to communicate. So, hey, what were you going to say?
Nothing about that. Don't want to disappoint. I'm sorry. I was just going to go back to your question about collecting and how to get started.
Yes.
And so for me, one of the things that we wanted to inspire within others, right? So we say that we collect locally, but we're inspired internationally. And we were having a conversation with Floyd Hall, and he said, what is local to you is international to somebody else. And so sometimes we take for granted what's right there in our backyard. And so one of the pieces, after my grandmother passed, her neighbor, Mr. Joe, had done this piece on the back of a piece of cardboard from like a cereal box. And I think it's absolutely beautiful, and my mom has it at her house. But how many Mr. Joes, how many family members, how many cousins, friends, you know, who do this art thing who would love your support, and not necessarily like at this high dollar value amount. So I think we too often take for granted things that are at close proximity. Like if it's close to us, we don't value it quite in the same way. And so to your point that you don't have to start with $10,000 or $15,000, but $25, $50, $100. I mean, we talked about Articulate a little bit, but there's a sweet spot there of $200 to $700 that you can get some amazing artwork from emerging artists of quality, and they really, really appreciate it. And we've heard over and over again where we've bought small pieces of work, and they said that paid a bill that I didn't know how I was going to pay it. Or I was ready to give up and go get a job, and you bought this piece of artwork and it let me keep going. Or my wife was telling me to go get a job, and because I sold this piece of artwork, she saw what I had been feeling about my artwork. And so I think it's just important to recognize all of the talent that's around you, and just because it's accessible to you doesn't mean that it's not worthy to be hung and appreciated and loved just the same.
I would like to open this up for questions from our audience. Yes. There's a mic. Is there a button you can push up? Do you have the other? Oh, okay.
Hello. All right. Good afternoon.
Hey.
Good afternoon.
My name is Charles. So I have a question about, do I got time for 2 questions?
Yes, you do.
Okay. All right. So my first question is, how many artist friends do you have that you haven't purchased their work, and or either you didn't like it or you couldn't afford it or whatever, and do you feel guilty about that, and how do you go about addressing that?
Okay.
And but how do you still support them? And then my second question, I guess that's 2 questions. My second question is, Atlanta is like #1 for raising a child and great in entrepreneurship, and we have all these Fortune 500 companies, but we're like last in like art funding.
Yep.
How can we encourage or entice that funding to go up? Like, what argument could be made to convince the people who getting all this income through all these other means to support the arts? Thank you.
Okay.
If I may, I'm going to start with your second question. I just saw this interview the other day, and I'm drawing a blank on the phrase that the brother used, but it was a really brilliant insight that he was making about the way that our the way we're socialized, the way we're educated in this country, it really focuses on like labor and production, right? Like you're doing stuff, but moves away from any kind of appreciation of culture, right? And so you have people who are trained and have these amazing jobs and making all this money, but they have no relationship, they have no understanding of, they have no real true appreciation for culture, right? Because we don't teach art appreciation in schools. We don't expose kids to the arts in ways like a lot of other countries do, right? And so I think a part of the challenge really is around having people like everybody on this panel, and I'm assuming everybody in this room, because you're here, because you're interested in art, becoming advocates, for arts at a really, really early stage. Not just when you get money, but how many of you take your kids to museums and galleries on a regular basis, right? Like, as opposed to just expecting the school to do it, How many of you have art books in your house, that your kids can just flip through? Like, I got interested in art from reading the encyclopedia. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never went to a gallery or museum until I was in college, right? But growing up, I used to flip through encyclopedias and just look at the art, look at the pictures, look at the image, you know what I'm saying? And so those kinds of things are important because they create a kind of contact that becomes ingrained in you, it becomes a part of you. And so when you get that Fortune $500 job, you know what I'm saying? Then you're like, oh, art is the next step. This is the next thing that I want to do. Yeah.
And one of the things I like to add to about that, I feel like Atlanta during certain points in history has been on the world stage, right? Even recently and whatnot. And I've lived here almost 20 years now, so I say it's home, right? So I say we don't like being embarrassed on the national stage. So like when I think about like all the development and money that went into changing Atlanta for the Olympics, all for good or bad, right? All the development that's going into Atlanta, getting ready for the World Cup. I do feel like the art fair that was here recently, the byproduct of that is going to be that we're on the world stage, and we're already starting to see people come from outside of Atlanta to Atlanta for the arts. Like, okay, what are y'all doing here? I do feel like the city and government are going to have to catch up with that. And I think the money is going to come behind that in a way, just because people are going to want to invest and get ready for that influx of attention. Yeah, so.
No, and I think, again, we look at what's close to us and we don't appreciate it like we should. And I think the city of Atlanta, the state of Georgia, that can be very true. I think there are times when, one, Black people are very resourceful, right? Like, we know how to make a lot with a little. Artists are very resourceful. They know how to do a lot with a little. In Atlanta, you have the intersection of both from a creative and a Black perspective. And so I believe that the city and the state as a whole have become, they're spoiled because they get a lot without having to give a whole lot. I don't believe that changes without our voices. And I don't know that we have collectively come together in a great way just yet to demand the change that we really deserve as an art community. I think there's something there. I do want to answer your first question about how many artist friends we don't have. There are not many. And sometimes I wake up at night thinking about the artist friend who we haven't purchased yet. But those purchases are based on feelings, like when it feels right. So it's on our mind, it's on our heart. But when it feels right, it's going to happen and the opportunity is going to come. But in the meantime, we show up for those artist art events. We share those artist art events. I will send an encouraging text to let them know they're on my mind and on my heart, and I hope they're doing well even if I haven't seen them. Those are the ways in which I hope we continue to encourage those artist friends when we don't have a piece of their work yet. But there are not many of them. There are really not many artist friends who we don't have their work yet.
And I feel awful. I like as soon as I go to an art exhibit, I'm like, oh, there they go again, dang. And it's like, I love you, and I just have not seen that piece that I love. But I love you, you know, but I do feel awful, but you know.
And George, so we have one artist friend. There was a piece that I wanted. I wanted a copper piece. And George said, we can't afford that thing. So stop talking to that person about that work. Because he said, every time you see him, you say something about this copper piece that we can't afford. And I said, George, no, like I'm keeping it at the top of my mind. I want it at the top of his mind. And this is going to be a real thing. And in 2021, we made 11 payments for that copper piece, and we have it. And it took a while. And George, again, told me to stop talking to him about it, but I believed that if I stopped talking about it, I would stop believing what I knew to be possible and what I knew to be close. So.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this panel. This has been, what I've been able to catch of it, it's been really, really cool and exciting and informative. My name is Shady Radical. I actually don't know if you remember, but I purchased your book from your trunk at an art show, like out of your trunk. Do you
That's so Atlanta. I see you. Yeah.
I was like, you got that book? He was like, actually, I think I got some in the trunk. So thank you for that.
We got some in the trunk today. Everybody needs one.
I actually was wondering about that book. It's an exciting time for Black collectors. We're seeing a lot of Black collectors. We have Alicia's and Swiss's collection at the High. Can you talk a little bit about publishing that book, publishing artists' work, and the impact that it's made on your collection and the artists? Just a little bit about that process.
It was the hardest thing I think we have ever done in our marriage. And I just didn't know self-publishing was like that involved. It was so many hours of work, right? And it's crazy because it's other people's work, but it really was a huge investment of time and energy and money and love. And I know I think a lot of us know when you are in those textbooks, those art books, there's no telling where that book's gonna end up. And it being on the right person's coffee table or in the right school, or down at Westlake now, we have a curriculum for it about teaching kids about the value of our work and kind of claiming or identifying that value for yourself. Those things are priceless, and we have no idea what that impact is gonna be long term. But yeah, I feel like it was worth it. Right? Was it? Okay.
No, I agree it was worth it. And George says that it was the hardest thing that we had done in our marriage. And I will just say up until that point, because we've done some more hard stuff since then. But it was important. And I think it's important to tell your story without waiting for somebody else to tell your story for you. I think too often we are waiting for permission to share what we believe is important and of value to us. Our collection is important and of value to us, and I think and hope that other people have been inspired to start their collections or to continue their collections. I think that it's a great reference point for emerging artists in Atlanta, people that you might not know, people that you may know work that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that that artist did that work. And so it was an important piece of work for us. And our collection is kind of like our baby, right? Like we haven't birthed children of our own, and our collection has meant a lot to us. And to be able to purchase works from George's former students, who are now 30 years old, right, with families of their own, is something special. And I hope that those who have the book have appreciated the effort that went into it.
I do.
I do too. Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sasha Jalan. I'm a fine art photographer as well as a professional archivist. I have two questions for you all. The first was, what kind of advice would you give to artists like myself for initiating and building meaningful relationships with collectors and galleries? And the second question is for the artists on the panel. What are your boundaries and standards for when it comes to collecting and selling your work? Is it just based on whoever's willing to pay that price, or is it more about the kind of relationship you have with that collector and what your plans or goals are for your work and where you'd like for it to be seen or held? Thank you.
Awesome. Who wants to take that one?
Let me think. So, in terms of boundaries, yeah, I think that might be a bit of a heavy word. I don't necessarily think about boundaries. I do, however, try to think about where I would like my work to be seen and who I make my work for to begin with, right? So, if you know anything about my work is focuses on representations of Black male masculinity and Black identity, and I'm very intentional about that, and so I'm always trying to think about audience in terms of where I present my work, right? I think I've been really fortunate that the folks who have collected my work and who do collect my work are really also very conscious about what I'm making the work about to begin with, right? And in many ways they are also invested in that work. And so it's allowed me to have work put into, a number of private homes, but also public collections and public institutions where people have access to the work that may not normally have access to it, right? And that means a lot to me. So I'm fairly open. I don't think I've ever had an experience or anything happen with someone who's collecting my work where I'm like, nah, you can't have it. I think, and again, I have folks who, have multiple pieces, like 6, 7, 8 of my works. Like you go in their house and it looks like a Fahmou museum, you know what I mean? And those kinds of things are really like moving to me because it's like, oh damn, you really get me. You really see what I'm trying to do, and I'm always appreciative of that. To your first question about advice for how you build relationships with collectors, I think, your description of what you do alone is really powerful, right? Like there's a lot of people who, consider themselves photographers or documentarians, but you describe yourself as an archivist, right? Which means that it's not just a matter of, recording, but you're also thinking strategically about how this connects to a greater narrative and greater history. And I think that kind of language is important for collectors to hear. Again, the exhibition that we're showing at ADAMA right now with the Fisher collection, it's the first time that their collection has ever left their house, right? And so, when we went in to begin selecting the works for the collection, we realized they didn't have any documentation of their collection. They didn't have a lot of the records for their collection. And these are major works, right? By major artists. And the opportunity that exists, and this is one of the great things about Atlanta not having as robust of an arts ecosystem as some other cities, is that a person like you can really position yourself to become an authority and to become a resource in this community for helping folks document their collections, understand the importance of it, understand how their collection connects to Clark Atlanta's connection, connects to Emory or Georgia State or even here at the Auburn Avenue Library, right? Someone who is an archivist is informed enough to also help take a person by the hand, take a collector by the hand and walk them through what the significance of their collection is as well.
Would add something? One thing I would like to add is also you were asking about galleries. Show up when they have, so showing up on openings is great because you meet the greatest amount of people, but showing up for artist talks are even better because then you learn more about the work that is in the exhibition and you have an opportunity to probably have those one-on-one conversations with those who are also at that artist talk. And there are very few galleries here that don't want you to come by. They all want you to come in and see their work. And if you come in and you don't feel the love, then you don't come back. Next question?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you all being here. Two quick things before my question. First, I wanted to acknowledge the fresh footgear across the panel. Number two, I think the term that you were looking for that describes the not having appreciation for culture might be Philistine or Philistine. Might be the term you might.
No, it was something. I'm gonna find it. It's in my phone, but I'll find it.
But and then my good friend Derek Bozeman, he's the keynote speaker. He's a big art guy. He would probably have a lot to say about this discussion, and I know he appreciates the work of Mr. Cecil Bernard here in Atlanta. So, but he's a big art guy, so he might say something about it. But this is my question, Lady Sohè. You talked about those things that are in proximity. I wanted to talk about my dad. His profession is he's a retired attorney. He's like 82 years old now. He's not the man he was. He's dealing with dementia and other issues, but he was also a contractor. He's one of those self-made men where he was dropped out of high school, 9th grade, but he basically built himself he became a contractor. He's one of those people that can just do all kinds of stuff. He's an autodidact. Teaches himself. We wonder growing up, how does he know how to do all this stuff? And he just taught himself. And one of the things he did, he taught himself to be an artist. He could draw, but he became a painter. He taught himself how to paint. He watched the guy on TV with the afro. I can't remember him. What his name?
Bob Ross.
Yeah. He never took a class, and he started out drawing. He would take Ebony magazine. If you're old enough to remember, you probably remember a picture of Sammy Davis Jr. on there with it's a famous photo. He would paint Ebony magazine covers. He would take pictures of like my grandmother. He would sketch them out and paint them. Long story short, he's not at home now. He's not able to live at home. But we're clearing out the house and trying to get the house organized. But he has all of this artwork, these things that he painted. Now there are things I saw him paint while walking through the house, going to football practice, going to school. Oh, what's Dad doing? There's things I saw that he painted. But we're finding a whole bunch of stuff that he painted. Amazing work. Now, you all are talking about real art, which I appreciate it. And I'm not saying my dad's art is not real art, but he has done some amazing work. And my question is, what are some recommendations on what to do with this work? And that's my question. And in terms of establishing an archive, preserving it, kind of along those lines.
Yeah, no, I think your dad's work is very much so real art, very much so real art, and I appreciate you for appreciating it now, right? I think documenting the work through photograph, possibly using like an artwork archive to take inventory and stock of the work. I'm a doer, and so I would want to show the work, right? I would want to show the work in the space as best I could for others to be able to see it and enjoy it. I don't know if you're interested in selling the work as much as you want people to see it. I don't know how large your family is and who might appreciate having the work, right? So maybe there's some sort of, what did they do? White elephant gifts at Christmas time? Yeah. And so you guys could do that with the artwork and with the family at the next family gathering or family reunion. I have a whole bunch of ideas I'm sure I could come up with. Part of the issue is often just having time, right, to make it happen. But appreciating it, I think, is a great step one.
Yeah. And photographing it, yeah. And just about all of us use Excel to, we started out.
No, we don't.
No, okay. Well, the first three.
No, not this one.
A little bit,
Okay, I
That's
used
cool.
Excel when I started out.
I do not excel at Excel.
Okay. But with the work that even I created, I just made sure I had a photograph and that because I often had to, work cells at different levels, at different times. And, the memory is like, what did I name that? Oh my gosh, I have no idea. So I made sure that I photographed it, put it in a file, and I named it, and I put the year. And starting with that is a great way for you to start seeing the collection that your father produced and ideas that come with you, and talk to people. And I think that's wonderful that you discovered this. Oh, wow, that is so fabulous.
Yeah, I would start framing it up too. There's something that happens when you put a frame on the work that all of a sudden people do want it. So, if you are gonna pass it on to family and whatnot, put it up, let people lay eyes on it, and see what happens from there.
And I don't know your dad's overall health condition and where he is now, but as much as he can be a part of that process or a part of that conversation, I think that would be great.
Great question.
How you doing?
Hi.
My name is Terrence Jackson, and I'm a motivational speaker. And when you told your story about how you started your first gallery, first thing that came to my mind was my driving principle: wealth is the direct result of workforce productivity. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was cracking up, and my eyes still watering, because I could relate how you built your wealth and it finally manifested. Because I give gifts too, as a exchange for value, But as far as how more money can go towards the arts, I would say with that same principle, like they say in real estate, if you want to increase the value of your house, you have to appreciate the value of your community. So I think, appreciating the value of the economy through art events and whatnot might bring a little more spotlight to it.
I agree. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone, and greetings to y'all. Thank you for being here. My name's Aziza Afi, and I'm an artist, but I'm a whole lot of things. Hi, Dr. Fahmou, if you could shout out to you. Okay. Anywho, so I have a few questions, but they're really all wrapped around, okay. The premise is collecting with appreciation in mind. So really, to you, the finance brain up there. That's what it's about, right? So, and y'all can answer this however you want, in whatever order, but the first one is the role of advisors and consultants in the art world, especially in the art scene, especially in Atlanta. Speaking to the sister's point of archiving being a very good skill to learn, but just speaking to that in-between space of you have to meet an advisor to collect or to be a collected artist, consultants, where do they play a role, if you see them playing a role at all in our Atlanta art scene. Also collecting artists and promoting artists who are not formally educated. How do y'all feel about that, And I would also say, any advice you have for artists who have, I guess, taken a sabbatical from the art world, I'm going to call it a sabbatical, but have taken a lapse of some sort, 10 years, we're talking long time. What do those folks do? How do they rev themselves back up, And just really get into the art world rather than just being, at their house in the studio doing their best, right? So yeah, those are my questions.
I can get on the last one because my memory's short. But no, I actually was not creating when I met Sohè. She didn't even believe I was an artist. She was like, what do you mean? Like, there's no artwork in your home. As a matter of fact, other than other artists. I had other artists work on my home and not my own. But nonetheless, I was burnt out from grad school and just wasn't creating. And I won't say marry your muse because, that's a lot. But I will say associate with people that can be your muse, right? Or, even if we're just talking to anyone out there, right? Somebody that can push you and get you off of your couch into this creative space, I think is necessary, and some of us don't have that self-motivation to do that. And so I think that surrounding yourselves with muses is a good look.
I think immersing yourself in the art community is a good one. So for somebody who doesn't have a background in the arts, right, coming from a finance space, an engineering space, a very number space, I have been really blessed with amazing art experiences. And every day I'm able to grow and learn, and Atlanta has a wealth of opportunities. And so if you found yourself kind of slipping out of that space, just jump right back in. Show up in Castleberry, show up on Peter Street, go to Zuccotti next week, come by ADAMA. You know, like there are all sorts of things that I think you can find yourself in, and hopefully something is sparked when you show back up in those spaces.
I'll just add to that. You know, I think something that's important to note is regardless of your journey, right? Whether you are a collector and you're thinking about working with an art advisor, whether you are an artist who doesn't consider themselves formally trained, whether you are someone who has taken a sabbatical for 10 years or whatever it may be, I think we have a tendency to think that the career of an artist is a linear trajectory, and it's anything but that, right? You can be as successful as you want to be out of the gate, and then the bottom can drop out. You can be ignored for 40 years, and then one day somebody's like, you know what I mean? Like there's no, it's really honestly like in many ways no rhyme or reason to how it works. It's the only thing that works is consistency. You know, like once you decide that this is what you're going to do, you just got to keep doing it. You know, my mentor Arturo Lindsay used to always say to me when I was a student, "There's no such thing as luck. You have to be prepared when your opportunities come." And I didn't understand what that meant until the opportunity presented itself to me, and I was prepared. And I was like, "Oh, this is what he was talking about." But I'll share, you know, a quick story, you know, again, thinking about this idea of an artist taking a sabbatical, right? You know, in 2010, by that point, I had shown my work around the world. I'd been in numerous, like, magazines and books and, you know, major shows and major collections and da-da-da-da. But in 2010, I was flat broke. I mean, broke. Like, you're talking about thinking about getting a job. Like, I was... You know, the National Black Arts Festival was happening that summer, and they had an event where they were giving, you know, this like giving recognition to artists who had like major impact on Black culture. You know, we're talking like Betty Starr and, you know, Thornton Dowell and you name it, like a who's who of artists. And they reached out to me and asked me to be one of the presenters of one of the awards, and they were going to give me a check for $100. That was all the money I had to my name, and I didn't even have the check yet, right? So I'm driving back, because, you know, driving from Augusta, you know, driving on I-20, and I'm cursing myself out, like, what did you think you were going to do? You know what I mean? Like, be an artist? Are you crazy? Like, you need to get a job. You tried, it didn't work, you know, da-da-da. So by the time I got back to Atlanta, I was ready to, you know, go Monday and apply for a job and, you know, just give up on this art thing. I go to this event at the National Black Arts Festival. I go on stage, I present the award, and they give me my check, and I go sit down in the audience to watch the rest of the show. And the next person comes on stage and says, you know, tonight we've been celebrating all of these, like, you know, artists who have had major careers, but we have another award that we want to present. This one was unannounced. This is an award that we're giving to an emerging artist. This is someone we believe will be the next in this lineage of artists, you know, to do great things. Born in Brooklyn, New York, to a Panamanian father and American mother. And I'm like, that sounds like my bio. And, you know, the next thing you know, they're calling me up on stage and they telling me, like, you're next, right? And so at my lowest moment, when I had given it all up, I was done. I was reminded in that moment, like, nah, you're just getting started. You know, like, this thing is not for the faint of heart, you know, and it's not gonna be easy, but it'll be worth it. Yeah.
And I also want to add something to that, because when I am working on something a solo exhibition, I always bring in emerging female Black artists to work with me. And just so they can have the experience of working on a solo exhibition. And I let them know up front, I only got $10 an hour, so, you know, there's 7 of y'all, so we'll work this out. But I make sure they get compensated. But I also tell them that this is something that I do every month. And I want you to also do that while you're working with me. And every month, I will apply to 2 things. And there's so many sources out there online. If you go to artworkarchive.com, they have calls for opportunities, and they list all categories. I said, every month, I want you to go through this list, and I want you to submit to something. And it will become a habit. And that way, the fear of not getting it, it doesn't matter, because your goal is building that habit of submitting your work and getting it out there. And the most wonderful thing happened for me is that by doing this, and I was getting rejected by everybody, and I was like, it doesn't matter, I am going to apply for this and this month. And then in 1 month, I got my first 3 residencies. I got one at Hambridge, which I took in February. I got one in Morocco that I did in March, and then I got another one at Atlanta Printmaker Studio. I do not recommend doing that in 1 year, but I do recommend that you apply and you keep a record of what you apply for and you build that muscle. And the second thing is just start showing up like you're doing now and have those conversations, because I have now become an adult and I learned how to be a caregiver. Well, when you're learning how to be a caregiver, you're not painting. You're making sure that your mom has everything that she needs and stuff like that. So I wasn't painting, and I felt like I was outside of the art world. And when I got back in my studio, it was like, no, Tracy, you got 78 paintings in here that you need to sell, and you need to get back into it. So you're never out of it. You just have different priorities in your life, and those priorities you learn how to manage, and then you get back on track and you keep moving, because it is a journey. I really wish it was a linear journey that went this way, but unfortunately it does this, and sometimes it goes this way. But just keep doing it, because if it's your passion, it makes you happy. You're welcome.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good to be here. I'm not an artist, I'm a genealogist, but my children, I have twin girls who are 16 in high school, and they are whom I consider artists. They go to School of the Arts at Central Gwinnett, majoring in visual arts, but I'm finding that they are very, very connected to the digital artwork, even though their classes are photography, sculpture, digital, all of the platforms. And I wanted to ask your advice on how to continue to encourage them to explore those, the other platforms other than their digital artwork. I mean, they draw like crazy on their iPads, or even using their iPads and doing those drawings, and how to encourage them to move out of their anime phase and moving more into their African culture phase. And I grew up I'm from Harlem, New York, grew up in a very cultural family, going to all of the exhibits at, the Natural History Museum and all of these things in the Harlem Studio and Museum. And so I'm used to seeing all of these things, and I try to get them, encourage them to, kind of follow that path, even though we're in Atlanta. But, my collection of African arts magazines are, catalogs are just not enough. So I'm just like wondering, how can I continue to inspire them to embrace their culture while they're still doing their digital artwork, and even if it's still kind of like the anime or the comic book style works of art.
I'll just say one. kudos to you for wanting to encourage that, because many of us know it's not a thing that's oftentimes encouraged, amongst black families, for people to go into the arts. Somebody will tell you to go get a real job. But I think one of the ways that you can do that, of course, is to, be sure to take them to, museums and galleries, as I'm sure you've been doing. But if and when possible, introduce them to artists, that are, doing the work, so that they can see artist studios and see how artists live and work. But I would also not discourage the digital. It's a new world. I think that the embrace of the digital married with the analog, right? It will be a world that they have to inhabit. One that will be, significantly different than the one that we grew up in and that we've, had to learn to navigate. I think, I'm actually, encouraged by the number of kids that I see who are, into drawing on their iPads and stuff like that, right? That's exciting to me. But I think at the same time, it's a phase too, right? It's a new toy. It's an exciting thing. It's flashy. It lights up. You can do things faster, than you can do, by hand. And so I think it's kind of also a phase, right? I think at a certain point, the more they are exposed to some of the traditional arts, they may find, those things are serve them more and serve their ideas more. But I wouldn't discourage the digital aspect of it. I too grew up drawing cartoons. In fact, my initial aspiration as an artist was to be a cartoon animator. So all I did was cartoons. I couldn't tell you nothing about a Picasso, but I could tell you all about Walt Disney. You know what I'm saying? And but again, I got to school and I got introduced to the fine arts, when I got to college, and I was like, oh, this is more like it right here. You know what I mean? And so, I was able to kind of move differently once I got exposed to those things. And so I think just a matter of just continue to expose them to as many things as possible is really just the thing. But let them be as they are, because they'll develop their voice that way.
And the one thing that I would like to add is that take them to artist talks. And there are a lot of artists that are painting in anime style, and I go to their exhibitions and I'm just like, whoa, that's dope. And just embrace it, but take them where they can actually talk with artists who are making a living from it, and that right there would get them motivated in a lot of ways. Because when I talk to artists, when I talk to kids and I tell them that I'm a full-time artist, and they're like, full-time or full-time, I was like, this is all I do. Okay, they're like, whoa, how do you do that? And I show them and I tell them how I do it. And their mind is just like, it's a possibility to them. And so the fact that your children actually love creating on an iPad, hey, they're creating. That right there is a beautiful thing. So I think we're wrapping up. Any final words?
Come to ADAMA. You can follow us on Instagram at ADAMA_ATL, and our website is ADAMATL, ADAMATL.org. Give us a follow, but please come through and please bring your daughters by the museum. And then also my exhibition, Weave the Roses, will be up until next Saturday, the 23rd. In fact, next Saturday, the 23rd, for the closing, I'll be screening a few of my films at the gallery. So it'll be a film screening, talk back, and festivities for the closing of the show.
Cool.
If you don't mind, please follow us at Sohè Solutions. That's kind of the umbrella organization for all the things we do around the arts. And every Wednesday we post Where Will Be Wednesday, and we share all the cool happenings in and around Atlanta. It's not necessarily where we will be, it's where we'd like to be, if time was not a constraint. And also the Galbreath collection, galbraithcollection.com, if you're interested in just checking out some of the artists that we have included in our book and to show them some love. And last but not least, Articulate ATL, coming up summer 2025. So please follow us for all of the updates. If you have any artists that you think could be interested, please, when the artist call comes out in the spring, pass it along, share the word. Yeah. And thank you.
And you can follow me at tracymurrell.com. And I'm in the process of adding the new work on the website, so I'm really excited about that.
All right. While you're following everyone, you can check me out at georgegalbreath.com, or I live on Instagram, George Galbreath, and yeah, we got Instagram for all of our pages. Yeah, so cool.
Thank you.
And we appreciate everyone who came today. Thank you.